Hello and welcome to another episode of How to Be a Movie Snob. We're back, y'all. Seth here, joined by Miss Mariah.
Hi.
And Mr. Patrick Gillette. Patrick doesn't
last name.
Just for Patrick Gillette because he doesn't like the word Pat or Patrick, so I went with Patrick Gillette with a Mr. in front of it. So he had all the consonants and vowels he wanted to feel more comfortable. So that's why I want this to be
I appreciate
a comfortable space. Folks, but we're not going to get comfortable in this one because Mariah picked the movie this week. So you know what that means.
Gonna get weird.
Terrifying and weird, but it has a little bit of heart. I'm like,
beautiful.
Yeah, it's going to be like that.
Haunting.
Mariah, how would you describe this movie to someone who's never even, I don't know, had a whimsy of knowledge? How would you say? Would you call this a doozy, or what would you? How would you describe it personally?
I would describe it, and this is probably my hot take-ish description. It's like a dark Narnia meets Diary of Anne Frank.
Oh gosh. Oh, harsh.
Kind of idea.
Side note, folks. Spoiler alerts. That statement alone might be one of the biggest.
Yeah, but like the opening of the movie,
but that doesn't tell anybody anything.
I'm not gonna lie. I thought it was just Dream World, and we're fine. Everything's fine. But then I realized I haven't watched that many Del Toro movies. Guillermo, I did not know what he does, and now I know what Guillermo does. You got to watch that guy. You got to watch him.
He turns his dreams into movies.
Oh my gosh, Pat, what would you describe? How would you describe this movie if you had a sentence like you do right now to describe it?
Ooh. It is. How would you describe it? I think that's what's really interesting about it. It is a little hard to describe, but it's like a fairy tale meets the horrors of war.
Yes.
I mean, some version of that, I guess, is how I would try and explain it. And then you'd be like, well, how does that work?
Yeah. Oh.
And I'd say, well, you got to watch the movie.
Do you know Guillermo? You my buddy Guillermo del Toro? Because he'll show you over and over again in multiple movies. I told Megan it was, like the Johnny Depp Alice in Wonderland, but like,
twistier.
But like people die and he doesn't have a goofy hat on.
Hardcore murder.
It's kind of like that. It's like dark, like a I think the director of that movie, like he usually
Tim
Burton, but like somehow darker, but yet somehow more heart as well. Because I feel like it had better. As much as I like This Is Halloween,
range.
Yeah. Oh, definitely more range, and which is what makes it the masterpiece that we're going to allude to it. Guys, if you haven't figured out, Mariah, what movie did you choose for us this week? Because this is on your top 10.
We watched Pan's Labyrinth.
Ooh.
Yay!
Directed by
Guillermo del Toro.
Oh, that's right.
Spanish-Mexican film.
Word. Takes place in World War II. Not the Spanish Civil War.
During World War II.
During World War II. And I'll be honest, this was a trip realizing I knew nothing about Spain during World War II. I thought I had like my Axis allies pretty well, put together. So when I was watching this, I'm like, I'm pretty sure the Nazis weren't in Spain. But when I watched this movie, it sure felt like the Nazis were in Spain. You know what I'm saying?
Nazi equivalent.
It was very Nazi-esque.
Yeah.
So this takes place in... Oh, gosh, I don't want to do this plot. Pat, do you want to do the plot as short as you can? Because I just realized it's some trippy stuff right away, and it gets real complicated real quick.
I think a high level, Mariah should do this, is a pregnant woman and her young daughter are traveling to a military outpost led by the mother's new husband and father of the unborn child, who is there to kind of suppress the Republic. I forget what they call the Maquis, whatever the insurgency
rebels
against kind of the nationalist group. And upon entering this woodland area, the little girl gets sucked into a fantasy world
little by little,
sorts.
little by little, one little bug at a time.
hijinks ensue. A lot of people die horribly.
Yes. Oh, jeez.
And you don't know totally what's real and what's not. And
spoiler alerts, guys. We're from this point on, we will have spoilers. So if you enjoy that 2 seconds where we didn't have spoilers, but from here on out, we're gonna have spoilers.
I think that's unspoilery as I could get really with that.
Folks, if this is your first time listening to this podcast, we are 3 individuals trying to become better movie snobs. So we're watching movies that are highly acclaimed, and we're trying to decide how snobby are they, and are they necessary watching for us to become truly movie snobs. And this is a great one, Mariah. I just want to start out and say, way to go.
Whoa.
I was very happy that you brought this. So this is going to be good. So
review spoiler.
But I didn't say I liked it. I just said this is a good snobby movie. Because as we know, there's lots of snobby movies that I will acknowledge that are snobby that I cannot stand. Don't like them at all. I don't want to name the Stanley Kubrick movie right away, but they'll come to mind. So first thing we often do on the show is cold brews and hot takes. I'm excited for your hot takes. We've kind of given away a little bit already, but I'm a little excited.
There's a mosquito here.
Oh yeah, they swarm to certain.
Just have itchy face at the end of the night.
I didn't notice anything.
It's fine.
We got Pigpen over here. Right? So Pat, we usually start with you.
Yeah.
Are you ready with your hot take?
I think I am.
All right. Are you drinking cold brew tonight? What's your?
I am, and I'm a basic typical guy.
Basic
P. So I'm back on the Bodhi.
Oh, it is a basic B.
I re-upped my Bodhisattva.
Nice.
Because it's just good.
Yeah, it's good.
And my hot take is that I think this is the best dark fairy tale I've probably ever seen.
Yes.
Like more.
And you might go, well, are there that many dark fairy tales? And yeah, there are quite a few dark fairy tales.
I would argue
Hans Christian Andersen
most
is
of them
all
are
dark fairy tales.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But
I guess I turned into films.
Yeah.
I think there's arguments probably for some others.
So you would take this over Emperor's New Groove, for the record.
It's not that dark.
Have you
not
seen
super
Yzma?
dark?
Scary beyond all reason.
Yeah.
Gronk here. Let me get that.
But this beats Legend. Although I love me some Legend.
Good reference
there. Probably beats like Dark Crystal and Labyrinth and that ilk.
Trial by Stone.
But it is definitely adult, so it puts it. Yeah, it's interesting. Anyway, that's my hot take. So
nice.
I can argue with people later.
The best dark.
The best dark.
The best. That's always good. Your hot take's got to be like extreme like that.
Like
that.
Yeah. That's why it's hot.
Okay. My hot take is I don't actually know who the audience is for this because it's really very kid feeling.
Guillermo del Toro is the audience.
Oh my gosh. It's the most like because it feels like a teen drama, like a coming of age story. But good night. No one that age should watch this movie. So every time I think about this movie, only can happen now. It couldn't have happened 20 years earlier because it doesn't have the right audience, and it couldn't. It doesn't make sense to me who the audience is at all. I don't. It's weirder than even.
Well, sure. I think 20 years before that, the darkest you could go was the Dark Crystal.
And no one went to it. And it almost put Jim Henson out of business.
Oh.
Rest in peace, Jim Henson.
I mean, this is 20 years old. So
yeah.
I meant to say 40. You shut your mouth.
Yeah,
40.
Yeah. I know. We all live.
I feel like it's still
2000-ish for me.
I know.
Too.
It feels like, it's 2007 right now. And this came out in 2004. Yeah. No, when did this come out?
Yeah, the 80s are only 20 years ago.
05, 06.
Okay. Yeah, this came out like I was an adult.
05.
Yeah.
06.
06 is what it says.
06.
Yeah. Okay, Mariah, that was not my hot take. Was not really a hot take, but it's just like.
What are you drinking?
Confusing. Oh, sorry. And I am also back to my basic Black Butte Porter. A couple B's. We got a Bodhisattva and a Black Butte.
Wow, I've got a B too.
And what should be?
I got a break side.
Oh yeah, but not truly a B. You're a wanderlust.
I'm a wanderlust.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
This evening. Yeah, my hot take. Yeah, I mean, kind of said it before. Just the darkest fantasy, not for children.
Best children's movie, not for children.
Yeah. Yeah, and as I was thinking, meets Diary of Anne Frank. Not only is it World War II, but she looks like Anne Frank. You kind of see the same little face and hair.
Kind of haircut. And
Okay, I got a question then. I picked up the Pan's Labyrinth book at my local library because that's what I do now, folks, because you should too.
It's a beautiful cover.
It's gorgeous. This is actually a first edition, which is really nice.
Whoa.
Yeah, for reals. But this was a young adult book. It's in the young adult section. And I wonder...
I bet you could write it a little younger than you can film it.
Right, because you say they don't say, and the blood squirted off of her head.
Yeah.
So you don't have to get into
well,
the
and the
gruesome
story's
details.
based off a younger child, too. So maybe
Yes.
he's thinking...
So...
He adjusted it.
What's the rating on this movie, by the way? I don't even know. Is
It's
it
R.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. But that's weird because like it does feel like it should be young adults. Like it feels
Reads like a PG-13.
it even has the feels of a PG-13 movie. Like this has the feels of a PG-13 movie in an R wrapper. Like that's what it feels like. It feels like you went too dark to get the right target audience, but yet
Yeah, maybe if the bad guy wasn't so bad, you could knock it down.
He could be just as bad. You just don't have to show all the bloody murders or the torturing.
Man,
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, best bad guy.
Because it's like horror level torturing sometimes. Like or a war movie level torturing. Like it felt like a not Schindler's List, but more like a Saving Private Ryan realism at parts. But then in a fantasy story. So I was like, it did seem unnecessary, but man, does he do it well. Let's talk about this. So you guys both seen this movie before, right? Mariah, how many times have you seen this movie?
Baker's dozen at
Jeez,
least,
Pat?
I think.
Probably not that many times, and it's been a long time.
It
Nice.
had been a long time.
Oh,
for
good.
Me too.
Good. I'm going to start
I was
this out.
struck by how much dread I had this time around.
Really?
Versus, I think, the first time. Yeah.
Because you knew it was coming.
The first time, I didn't know. Yeah, I didn't know it was
exactly
coming.
Right.
And to your point, the movie kind of lulls you in with like, it's just a fantasy thing in a way, and then it gets real hardcore. And I think this time I'm like, well, I remembered how hardcore it got, but I kind of forgot the details of how it worked.
For sure.
So I just felt kind of in a panic for Ophelia the whole time.
That's
like
I
was
know
like,
this
bad
takes
stuff's
a
gonna
turn,
happen.
but I don't remember
I know
when.
where we're going.
Yeah, I couldn't quite remember,
Yeah.
and so I just was like, But yeah, I'm curious, Seth. First time.
Yeah, I would agree with that, what you just said, because I enjoyed it because I was like, oh, I don't know where this is going. I don't know. Because there was like fictional stuff going down, spoiler alert, guys, I just assumed more people would be living to the end of the movie, just to be real. Because like they had this whole scene where this magical gross creature is keeping the mom alive. Why not bring a couple people back to life? Like, I just assume that's where we go. Like, if this was a Disney movie or some other fantasy movie, or like not a horror / kids movie or whatever the heck this thing is, you would have not needed to kill some of the main characters in the way they were killed. And so it was very surprising until I watched the movie he did earlier, Devil's Backbone. I'm like, oh, this is what he does. He kills the main people. That's what he does. He's a main character. It felt Game of Thrones-esque, where it's like, hey, you like this guy? Gone. Dead. Oh, let's build
Don't
up
get
another
comfortable
guy.
with this
If you
person.
like another character, gone. Dead. Again.
Yeah, I think what's interesting in the juxtaposition between fantasy and like harsh realities, right? Like this is the harshest of realities set against this fantasy. And that is so jarring in a way that is really interesting. And then I think the whole thing too plays on like, what is real here?
Yeah,
because I think there's ways to interpret, is she
are we jumping into that already? Oh my gosh.
I mean, it's hard not to.
It's hard not to. Mariah, what was your feeling before Pat jumps the gun?
Yeah,
literally.
We can wait. We
gotta wait to jump, because that's like the whole what
feeling
is
and
this
rewatching.
Movie? Yeah, because you said it's been a minute.
I think the thing that maybe it stood out to me in the first many times too, but I was reminded that this is so like a Hans Christian Andersen fairy tale in that the little girl is making the stupidest decisions. Like, you're all sitting there going, don't. They told you not to do that. And that's what you're doing anyway. It's like Hansel and Gretel. It's like Little Red Riding Hood. It's Alice in Wonderland. It's like, why? Why are you not paying attention?
Like Dwight Gooden.
There's like one rule, and you're not listening. And this is going to go very badly for you. And now a fairy is dead. 2 fairies are dead.
In the most gruesome way possible. Again, why? Why would it have to be? I mean, it was beautifully done. So amazing.
Yeah. I did get a little frustrated at that piece. And I remembered going, oh, yeah, she was not listening. It's just a couple of grapes.
And so that's why I made my kids watch this and be like, and that's what happens when you don't listen.
Yeah.
Fairies die.
Yeah.
Fairies die. Are you happy?
Yeah. It's a little worse than I don't believe in fairies.
And they die in a horrible way. Not only do they die in a horrible way.
By the freakiest looking person that could be.
The Pale Man.
Oh, that's so. I thought
you don't want to mess with the Pale Man.
I was a little surprised how little he was in the movie. As much as I've seen like pictures of that,
he was in it enough. Enough
you don't
to
need
disturb
a lot.
you.
I thought it would bring this. Oh, you're right, Pat. It's hard not to talk about what is real and what is not real, because I assumed the bad guy would be killed by that guy. Like, if it was a true fantasy, you know what I mean? But again, that goes into the reality question. So, let's just jump into it, Pat. Okay, so the question of this movie is a few things. Question number 1 was what's going on with the Civil War situation? Because this is kind of a continuation of the Spanish Civil War. Let's just call it as it is. We just looked up the history before this podcast began, and it's real complicated and it's real awkward because the Francoists, who are the bad guys in this movie,
have won the war.
They won the Civil War,
but are continuing to have to
keep
these people
rebels.
In check because they're still at work.
So even though Spain was not a big contributor to the old World War II, the Nazis were backing the Francoists while the French rebels that were still, not captured by the Nazis were backing the people in the good guys in the forest.
The communists in the woods.
But we didn't know. We don't know they're communists really, but I think they say communists, and so then it gets real awkward because as Americans watching this movie, you realize real quickly. I'm like, oh, cool. So the Nazis backed them, and then America backs them later after the war. But they don't talk about that in the movie. But that's just a little treat for you later. And the USSR, supports the good guys in the movie at the end. Anyways,
it's confusing to sort out what's happening because it's World War II time.
Yes,
but there's not any key players from World War II in it.
Though it feels like they are. It sure feels like it's the Nazis versus the Americans. Ironically enough,
it throws you off.
It throws you off a lot which is great because I love movies that are not. This is so Spain centric that people from Spain get it and no one else does because the rest of us were fighting a pretty big war. While they're still kind of figuring out their Civil War.
Well, and as outsiders, we're confused, a little conflicted about, fascists versus communists. Who is the bad guy here? Are they not both bad guys here?
Everyone's a bad guy.
But for Spain, there was clearly a better outcome for them at the time.
Well, and I think this is one of those things where you can kind of struggle by learning too much, but not quite enough. right? I think when you just watch it and you're like, well, these are the bad guys and these are the good guys.
For sure.
In this
we clearly know how historical Spain saw this play out, or how Guillermo history
how
tells
they
you
felt about it, which was great because we never would have known who, you never could tell the Americans that the communists are the good guys, but this movie 100% we're cheering for the communists. Now let's just be real right now. Calling people communists and fascists is too simplistic, to be honest, because it's usually just whatever government system can get you out of the bad regime that was before. And so I have a hard time where people just like, oh, they're fascists, they're communists, and they're nationalists. I'm like, I feel like it's more, subtle than that. And I get it. Both sides are pretty bad at certain times. But at this moment, Guillermo definitely feels that the rebels were the good guys and the Francoists were the bad guys during World War II. And that was probably...
Yeah. And really the place to be was the underworld, and that was the goal in this movie. If you could be anywhere, don't be here.
Yes.
Get back to the
where there's pain and suffering.
Let's get to this. This is real.
Let's get into the real stuff.
The real stuff is the whole point is life is so hard. There's no good place to be. In this movie, there's no hope. Because even the hope of being with the rebels is not true hope. It's crazy. And this is where it gets real dark and real. Because we are fortunate to live a time not only where we're not in open war where we're being drafted, or civil war in our backyard where we're having to choose between family members, but we also, we can't even imagine it, that there's no good place to go. There was no out. There was never like, once she gets to this person, she's going to get free from the situation. And you realize that's kind of the message of this movie.
Yeah.
And then the question is, she's a princess who's escaping to another world. And is that really the situation? Or is it like the movie where his son goes to the concentration camp with him and he pretends like it's all a game?
Oh, yeah.
The boy in the striped pajamas?
Yeah.
No. What was that one?
No, not boy in the striped
pianist.
Not the pianist. He won an Oscar for crying out loud.
Life is wonderful.
Life is wonderful. Life is beautiful. Life is beautiful.
Oh,
beautiful.
Life is beautiful.
Life is beautiful. Got that.
They're all around the same time.
That's
to be fair to us.
That's the question. Is this movie escapist, or is this movie actual fantasy? And it's really a good question. And the one scene where Guillermo kind of shows his hand is when she's talking to the fawn at the end and the evil leader comes up and sees her talking to nothing. And so the question is,
just because he can't see the fawn
in a lot of these fantasy movies, exactly right, the innocent can see the fawn, but the non-innocent can't. And so,
he'd also just been drugged. And we also established early, because of Mercedes, she's like, do you believe in fairies or fawns? And she's like, I did when I was younger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you kind of go, and there's even a little bit like internet stuff, like, was she tested as maybe an incarnation of the princess who failed as a kid?
That's what I thought. That's what I thought.
Failed attempt.
Which is why she kind of was familiar with it at all. So to me, I think nuance. Showing the hand is like her escaping her room with the chalk door and the maze changing. Although you could also go, well, he was drugged and maybe he just got lost, and that's our interpretation. But we saw other people experience a version of the fantasy, and even the what's the creepy root?
Yes.
The mandrake.
The mandrake root, yeah. And like, it was healing her, and they're like, we don't know why this is working, and then threw it in the fire and immediately stopped working.
By the way,
I come down on the side.
Yeah, go ahead, finish your thought before
Well, I come down on the side that it was real, but she did die in our world.
Right.
You know what I mean? It was like many things were true at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Guillermo del Toro talks about this a lot. Like a child's imagination is as real as anything. He had this analogy for like what is reality, but like stories we tell ourselves. Like if you look at borders of nations, there's no truth to a border. It's just what we all say it is.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you look at it from a satellite, it's just land and water.
Yeah.
Like there's no, borders, just these stories we tell ourselves. And so I think in his version, it is real, but I also think he's very fine with people interpreting it not that way.
Yeah.
So that's where I come down on it.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. He leaves it open so you can go both ways, which is kind of the brilliance of it.
Yeah.
He leaves it into a way.
Well, he just makes the real world so dark and awful that you want to believe the fantasy. Everybody is rooting for that to be real. You want her to be the princess. You want her to go back. You want this all to, have some sort of happy ending because it's not going to happen up there.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think they never let us off the hook one way or the other.
No.
Like that's the thing. There's evidence for both sides.
Yes.
So that you can't be like, oh, it was a fantasy. It's like,
yeah.
A minute before you could argue one way and now you could argue a different way. And like, again, I think she dies and her mother died, but they show up in the underworld and you go, well, yeah, but like that's the whole fable of the princess is she died and she gets reborn, again. And I don't know. I kind of love that.
I think the only hiccup in that is that the baby's there in the underworld.
Yeah.
And he clearly lives.
Yeah. I mean, but like, what is time?
Yeah.
How long were they waiting?
Yeah.
How does this all work? It's a good point. It's a great point, Mariah.
Yeah, because if the kid, that's a great, Whew. Well, that's the podcast, guys. No, just kidding.
Yeah.
We're just here to help you think some more deep thoughts.
Wow, and it's very harsh, but when you realize this is probably Guillermo del Toro's
magnum opus, they call it
often, but it's a more complete feeling movie that leaves it open as opposed to Devil's Backbone and not as light as, of course, Pinocchio, because Pinocchio had some Spanish Civil War.
Sure. But it was kind of, it was intended for children. And even then, they kind of pushed
the limit
some
a little bit.
Borders and the darkness.
As he would say, animation is not a children's medium. It's a storytelling medium. Just because something's animated doesn't mean it's meant for children. We can tell any stories in the medium. So like he's not shy about it. And then we can, maybe there's a deviation into just Guillermo del Toro's like filmography. The guy's wild. Like the darkest, most kind of horrifying things. And then he does silly stuff. Like honestly, the Hellboy movies, I like his Hellboy movies. They're pretty silly.
They're hilarious.
Pacific Rim is just
what the heck?
It's just kids playing with toys in a way that is so appealing to me, but it's like not a deep movie by any means.
I watched
It's
that,
so superficial.
And I thought it was a joke. Like I'm like, this is hilariously bad. But everyone loved it. And I realized
it's so fun. That movie's so rewatchable. Certainly as like an animator.
I need to rewatch it because when
robots punching monsters, like yes, I don't need it to have a purpose.
No.
Just justify that visual a little bit.
Entertain
I'm
me.
down.
Let's do it.
I think I was like getting into a stage of like, oh, I get snobby movies, starting to watch it, and then I was like, what is this garbage? Like, why is this director so loved? I'm so confused. Like, I was just like, and then because when was that Pacific Rim? 2008? Or was it 2004?
After this, for sure.
Yeah. So what the crap? You do this movie and you do Pacific Rim?
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Which doesn't feel like it's in the same wavelength.
Like, I know Stanley Kubrick's a chameleon, but Del Toro's is manic. I just don't know like how he did. Yeah.
It had a trajectory. So he did Pan's Labyrinth, then he did, which was actually after Hellboy. I forgot Hellboy was before this.
It is.
90s.
Again,
and then he did
not have a trajectory. He went, let's make
and
some
then
money.
He did Hellboy 2.
You're missing his best movie of all time, Blade 2, obviously.
Blade. I mean, I'm a fan of Blade 2.
Yeah, I know you are.
It was
your top
Pacific
10 movie
Rim
of all time, I think.
Then Crimson Peak, then Shape of Water.
And Shape of Water is another one just out there. Like that's more like snobby, like
Nightmare Alley is also kind of snobby. Oh yeah, and he got the Oscar for Shape of Water.
Yes.
So.
And
I just love. It feels like he makes stuff he likes.
Yeah.
He described this movie because he gave up a bunch of money to do this in Spanish. Mm-hmm. People were like, "If you make it in English, we'll fund this." And he's like, "Nah,
because then you're gonna want me to do it the way the market wants."
Yeah.
And he was like, because he's this big collector. Like he does just collect stuff. He did like a museum tour of just his crap. That it's like, look at this crazy thing.
Cabinet
and he was like, I wanted to have this movie as a thing I had. And so he made it. And I think that's a lot of his stuff. He just goes, I want this story to exist so that I can have it. And that's what he does. And so he directs a little video game, a little nightmarish looping video game called PT with Kojima. And then he did like mostly scarier stuff. But every now and again, it's like, Pacific Rim. And cartoons. He like did this Troll Hunters Netflix series, which is like kids hunting trolls. Mm-hmm. He's a fascinating person. And he's delightful. I think that's the thing you mentioned too. There's a lot of heart in this movie.
Yes.
Because I think he has big feelings. He's like a sweetheart of a person.
Yeah, he looks
who just likes the macabre.
Yeah.
Huh.
So it's horror touched with heart and all this stuff. Yeah. And you're like, what a crazy thing.
It's what makes it good, because I'm not a horror fan like you psychos, but I appreciate this movie because I'm like, this is a fantasy. If this was just told, it would have been in the realm of the Hans Christian Andersen just fairy tale, right? And this is another thing. I think it's because of the medium of film. It's too realistic, but I feel this is going to go on a little of a pulpit here, guys. So buckle up. We shield our children from so many things these days. When 100 years ago, they would have seen death in the street. They would have seen bodies. They would have seen just regular life stuff.
Well, and the fairy tales that were available to them were pretty dark. They weren't sugar-coated.
No, and I think that is the reality of what Guillermo had to see growing up versus other people during that era, his parents, his grandparents. If you were alive during World War II in occupied France or Civil War Spain, you saw some things. You saw some things that you'll never not see. And that's more, we're so, like, sure, our movies show these graphic things, but we don't have a way to, like, expose our kids to, like, a body. It feels like this is
you want to see a body?
His attempt to bring reality into like this mix of kid and adult. I don't know. It just feels old school, scary stories that we don't longer tell our kids, but we used to 100 years ago. That's what this feels like. It feels like this has been perfect 100 years ago because it seems like everywhere I've traveled and been, they have these kind of awful stories where like, hey, if you do bad stuff, like the monster's going to come up and kill you and murder you and tear apart your
if you
limbs.
Eat anything
like
at that table,
and it's usually like that.
I'm going to rip those fairies in half.
It's usually not like
bite them.
You're going to go and you're going to get in trouble. It's like, no, Krampus is going to murder you.
Yeah, you'll be ripped apart.
Yeah, Babadook or whatever. Like, so it is interesting because this feels like a fairy tale from 100 years ago.
Yeah.
But we're not showing our kids.
No.
But we're just not showing our kids it. So,
should we talk a little bit about the not reality piece plot of this?
Sure, let's do it. I mean, we've alluded to it so much, whether it's real or not.
So Ophelia meets the faun. And the faun says, I think you're the princess we've been waiting for. We need you to do these 3 tasks to get back to your home, to your father, blah, blah, blah.
To prove you are the princess.
So the first task is meeting up with this toad and getting the key from his stomach.
Good night.
And that's gross.
Bugs
and dirty,
monstrous,
and she's wearing a nice dress that she's not supposed to get dirty, and her new shoes.
So much.
So she's already making bad choices, disappointing her mother.
Not
who
gonna
makes
lie,
the dress.
I was like, oh, that's Dottie. Gonna do that. My daughter's gonna do that.
She's just filthy.
Dad finally picked out an outfit that matched, and she went in and got it all muddy. Now she gets to put her non-matching clothes on again.
Saddle up, buddy.
Also, though, in her defense, why is she wearing the dress in the morning for a dinner that night?
That's
out in the woods.
You
don't put that on to the last minute.
That's not wise.
You go wander off into the muddy forest. It's
not
fine.
Wise.
Sister Maria would have made her play clothes out of the curtains so she could go out and get them all as messy as she wanted.
That's right. So she gets the key. She does her thing with the toad, get the key. The next task is using the key to open a door to get this dagger, and she has to get past the pale man to do it. The only caveat is do not eat anything at this huge table full of food. And the thing is, she's not starving. She's getting to eat. So that makes it even more infuriating that she's like so greedy. Just a couple grapes.
Watching it this time, I felt like she kind of turns in a way where, to me, it implied the food was like calling to her, because she was also kind of in a trance.
Yeah.
Basically she's eating these things. So like, to me, it felt like there was a supernatural element to it,
as
well as like her just being
while the guy's putting his eyeballs in his hands. And
it was frustrating.
Yeah, she felt like so with it until that point in the movie. Like she's like, she's kind of observant. She's kind of figuring stuff out.
Swatting the fairies. No, I'm just eating these.
But the other theme of this movie is disobedience. Murder. And like when it's justified. Yeah. No, like when it's justified.
Oh,
and a huge part of the moral integrity of people in this movie was saying no to doing bad things.
Yeah, the doctor,
this is a situation
Mercedes.
Where you could argue, okay, she should have probably said no to this, but saying no to getting blood from her brother. And so the movie is training us that like Ophelia is unafraid of authority and saying no when she didn't think something made sense.
Yeah.
And
but this still
so to her,
I don't buy that. I still think
she didn't know, but she didn't really know what was going to happen. She's like, I didn't think anyone would notice.
It starts out as just kind of being obstinate or, unaware that there are consequences. But in the end, that stubbornness or, conviction to whatever she thinks is right, regardless of what the authorities say she needs to do, saves her and her brother, and happy ending, la la la.
No, but still not believable. She walks in, this freaky looking dude, and she still eats the grapes. That makes no sense.
Yes. Well, he looks super harmless with his hands down.
No, he don't.
Looks like he's taking a nap.
Yeah, he doesn't look nice.
He looks awful.
But what kid
I wasn't scared of him.
Thinks about consequences, right? I think that's the other thing. Like, didn't have a concept of what the consequences could be. Obviously, she didn't want the fairies to get eaten.
No.
And she didn't want to get eaten, but she didn't. It was, I don't know. I think that's one of those things, like, because it's this weird adult movie where every choice people make is life and death.
Mm-hmm.
For a kid to be susceptible to eating some sweet grapes, that should be fine, except everything in her world is life and death. And so we're mad at her for putting herself in added danger in a world where she's already at risk of being murdered by her dad. You know, like, I think that's like a frustration of it for us as the viewer. I think from a character perspective, yeah, kids make dumb choices all the time, and you go, why didn't you think about what would happen? And they go, I didn't know. I'm a kid.
Those grapes looked real good.
Real good.
Right? Like, you go, oh, you shouldn't, like, you broke the lamp. What did you think was going to happen? You kicked the ball in the house. And they go, well, I didn't think it would hit the lamp. Right? Like, kids aren't great at thinking about
Are
cause
you
and
speaking
effect, so-
from personal experience, Pat?
Yes. Both as
That's
the kid and the parent.
Yeah, this is what he said to me last time I came over. Actually.
So I
What
was
did you think was going to
frustrated.
happen, Seth?
I was frustrated, but I also felt like, okay, they did a little bit of a shot where they're like, is she entranced by this food? And then anyway, I thought it was just along with the
But
so,
the whole like tense intensity building as he's waking up while she's just swatting fairies away who are trying to warn her, and like,
yeah,
it's great. I love the way he's put in this, just the off. I mean, I love the cinematography of that. It's just insane.
It was good.
And the chase.
Oscar-winning cinematography.
Yeah, the chase.
I also, this is a good chance to just be super stoked about Doug Jones.
Yeah.
And his
the one American
performances
guy.
in all Guillermo's stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Who?
his
What?
Pale Man. Doug
Pale
Jones
Man
is the
and
man
the
inside
Fawn
Fawn.
are played by the same guy. The one American
Oh.
English speaker in the whole
Yeah.
thing.
And what's his name?
And Doug Jones.
Doug Jones.
Okay.
And
what
he plays
Doug.
sounds like a cartoon.
He
animator.
plays the Shape of Water sea creature, and he
Oh.
plays
Gollum, I
why
think.
can't I remember his name?
Is it
Also the
Gollum?
sea creature in Hellboy.
Oh, wow.
He's like, mostly you've seen him in movies in suits as a
Yeah.
weird creature. Occasionally you will see his actual face, but not as
Oh, geez.
and Guillermo
Yep.
likes him.
There you go.
He's a very thin man.
Yes, he is. Whew.
Is he doesn't do the voice in Hellboy either, right?
Not in the first one. David Hyde Pierce,
Yeah,
I think,
that's what I was
dubbed him.
gonna say. It's because
But the Golden Army, it is his voice.
Oh.
And this one, it's also not his voice,
No.
although he did learn all his lines,
In Spanish.
so he could do it, which is why the lip sync works, is because he is technically saying this stuff.
Mhm.
But anyway,
that's not
he's
bad.
so good. When his eye, it flares, the visual of this, and I think, Seth, you're like, why wasn't this more in the movie? It's so evocative as like the thing
It's
you know
so
from this
good.
movie.
It's so good.
Because it's so good, and
So
it's
cool.
it's so
so
gross and so cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great,
And
one of the best monsters I've seen in a long time.
I love it.
the other fun fact is Stephen King watched this movie with Guillermo del Toro and was apparently squirming so much in that Guillermo del Toro said that was as good as winning the Oscar for Shape of Water. Was watching
Making
Stephen
you get
King
uncomfortable.
squirm.
Stephen King squirm.
Yeah.
That is great.
Yeah.
That's a win.
All right.
So
yeah.
cool.
So then Mariah, you're saying the tasks. I apologize. I
Yes.
derailed
So
us.
she kind of accomplishes the second one, but also broke the rules. But so she kind of loses. The mission is aborted for a little while because the Fawn says, "You're not the one. You know, you broke the rules. I'm out of here. You're never gonna see me again." And then things just kind of really go downhill for her in reality. And just as it's all going so badly, the Fawn comes back and says, "I'm going to give you one more chance. Get your brother and come to the labyrinth." And she manages to do it with the magic chalk. And
or something.
the Fawn demands that she give him her brother to give get a couple of drops of blood from an innocent. She refuses.
It's just a couple drops. I would have cut my brother. Easy.
Absolutely.
Easy.
I'd cut my brother right now.
For sure. I'm
If
like,
he
wait.
was-
She'd also been warned to not fully trust the Fawn.
Yeah,
True.
he does kind of give you like, even from the get-go, you're like, is this a...
And
It's not
Mercedes
Mr.
says don't
It's not
trust
Mr.
them.
Tumnus. It's like...
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Tumnus, you can't trust either.
Well...
Says that's a good point, Mariah. You
that's
just
true.
proved the point.
Never trust a fawn.
Don't trust a fawn. Here's the crazy part, though. At the point of the movie when everyone was dead, or thought she was dead, she thought she was all alone. All she had was the fawn. That's the crazy thing about this movie. At that point, she thought she only had the fawn left in her life.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do?
Not fun.
And
Well,
she
and her
knows that
little
the
brother,
fawn's
I
not
guess.
gonna hurt her. Kind of. Mostly. Hopefully. But at least the fawn
Less
hasn't.
likely than her stepdad.
At least the fawn hasn't tried to like literally murder her.
Well, that was the interesting thing too in the movie was outside of like that first shock of seeing, the fairy as a stick bug when it popped out the hole, she was never as scared of any of the fantasy stuff as she was of like her first time meeting the captain. And it's just like,
yeah.
it's like, no, the real world is scarier than any of these scary challenges.
Yes. This was my favorite thing about it. And he did the same freaking thing in Devil's Backbone. And I don't know how he did it, but the real people are always scarier than the fictional. And it's and Devil's Backbone's a way scarier ghost. I mean, not scarier than the Pale Man. The Pale Man's freaking terrifying. but you don't, there's no jump scares with the Pale Man. There's other than
no, not really.
Even this is kind of slow. But
well, yeah,
it's
the
just
chase
kind of
is slow.
dread.
Yeah, it's all. Just,
it's just very. I love it because it's not cheap horror. If that makes sense, it's very well.
Yeah, it's all
done.
in your face.
Yes, it's even a little methodical and slow sometimes, but still very effective.
Do we want to use that as a segue from the fawn and the Pale Man into the makeup / CGI / costumes?
Yes, I did no research on this. Please enlighten me. I'm so
also
excited.
all
Oscar
the
winning.
different pieces that were used to make this
Please
look as
go
cool as it did. Pat?
Well, no, I don't know where to start. I actually watched a bunch of stuff on this, listening to the costume or makeup effects people talking about all the different things.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them, I think, and I think watching any Guillermo del Toro movies, especially ones that have creatures, is it all feels like the Guillermo verse visually, despite having a lot of different artisans. It all somehow comes back to like his mixture, and I think something he did really well.
It's like Tim Burton. He's like Tim Burton.
Yeah.
Or like Yorgos, or
and I'm not as familiar with Yorgos as I am
vibe.
Tim Burton, but I was like, now that I've watched like 3 or 4 of his movies, I'm like, oh my gosh,
yeah,
I'll recognize
he's
him
got
now.
a look.
He does, even though he's not drawing it.
No.
Like he's not the one. Like
no, but
he's got his hand in it so much, though.
He does draw some stuff. Apparently, the Pale Man was basically all sculpted. And Guillermo was like, what if he didn't have a face?
Oh, jeez.
And it was basically like, so he's like, keep the mouth, let's move these nostrils up, but like, it's just smooth. And the makeup guy was talking, he was like, no, like we just did all this work. And then they were like, it's better. It's way better.
Yeah.
It's like,
and even, and the fawn, Guillermo is the one who was like, it should look like it's made out of wood and stuff from woods. And so he just does a really good job
the nature
of being inspired by atypical things. He had this kind of horrifying comment where he's like, I'll ask like the concept artist or any of the artists, like, what were you referencing? And if it's like any movie or something, he'll be like, nope. We're not going to do that then. He's like classic art or, nature or whatever cool. But he's like, I don't want anything that feels like it's been built before.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, then you've already seen it. And so there is this freshness and weirdness. And, with the Pale Man, he's like, technically that's an ogre in this fiction.
Oh.
But it's like, what if it's
double checking this.
Like a old fat guy who lost a lot of weight?
Which he did at the time, and that's where he got the ideas. He'd lost a lot of weight, and he was like, oh, let's make the skin sag.
Yeah. And so there's just wild stuff where, I don't know. Anyway, so all coming from Guillermo's kind of skewed version of tropes, in a way, fairies and ogres and fawns, or, Pan, even though it's not Pan. That's the other thing we could get into. Pan is not in this movie. There is no Pan. It's a fawn.
Yeah. What
the
crap?
Distinctly not Pan.
Pan is a fawn god type person, described as a fawn in so many countries, and so I think they liked the name better.
But in
than
Spanish,
just a fawn.
this is like the Fawn's Labyrinth.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's the fawn. And they're very clear it is not Pan.
No.
But anyway, so we have this great sense or great use of practical makeup, mostly with Doug Jones. Super great stuff. They basically do a lot of like green screening around like the legs of the characters. So if you actually look at the Pale Man, you have like a little shred of leg, and then it's just green suit basically that they comp out, so it looks all thin.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of it's makeup. Same with the fawn. Doug Jones is on stilts, legs. But then they kind of took out part of his leg.
He said it was the most comfortable costume he'd ever worn too.
Yeah, because it was all these parts.
That's funny.
Yeah, everything was not attached to it, other pieces or something.
Yeah, but also watching him get in it, they're throwing so much like talcum powder around so he could put the thing on, because it's like skin tight. And so him describing anything as comfortable in that scenario, you're like, you're an insane person.
Yeah,
but he's
dealt
dealt with a lot of suits.
Yeah.
But anyway, so there's a lot of that, a lot of practicality. And then for stuff that they needed to enhance, they went with CGI. CGI holds up, I think, okay for the most part. Every now and again I go, fine. But like the frog was an interesting one. And Mariah, chime in anytime, because I'll just ramble about this.
No, I like
the original thing for the frog or toad was she was supposed to go into this big domed kind of subterranean room, and the frog and have a big fight with the frog, and it was going to leap around. And Guillermo del Toro's like, you guys are just gonna make a puppet for this? That's gonna work? And they're like, oh yeah. And they're like, it's not gonna be too heavy. No, we'll be fine. And he's like, of course it got there, and it was way too heavy. And so
in 2 hours they make the tree trunk.
Well, if this frog can't jump around, it's gonna look silly and tiny in this huge domed room. And they have this finished set with this glowing like amber chandelier thing, and they're like, what if we just move this whole thing to the tunnel, which she already was going to crawl through, and then he doesn't need to move that much.
There's not a room, he's just at the end of the
because then he'll seem big and a little bit imposing. And then it became where it's like, okay, the puppet can't do that much, so they replaced a lot of the CG. Anyway, like they did a really good job, I think. Like off in a lot of these older movies, enough practical mixed with CGI that you buy more of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of just two companies. There's like the practical company, and then
the
CG company.
The impractical company.
But the funny thing that came up, because like you were saying, Seth, like how gnarly some of the stuff is.
Yeah.
The visual effects guy worked on Romero movies, so zombie movies. And they had a gag in that where they were eating flesh, and it basically came up in the fairy eating scene. They're like, what if we did it kind of like that? And Guillermo's like, yes, let's go full zombie on this. So that's why eating the fairies is so gross.
And he's
actually
it's
like a zombie effect.
Condoms full of fake blood.
Yeah.
That's
it's just so gross.
makes it even grosser when you have the visual of it. You're like, oh.
Oh, Guillermo.
But yeah, I think that's what's so fun about him is it's like I like all these elements, and he's a good enough artist to somehow make them all make sense together, even though you're like, whoa, this is jarring.
I think also just with all of the insane things that are happening in the darkness and all of that, he sticks with the theme of nature and keeps everything in a green the whole time. And I feel like it also just adds to the beauty of it, where you kind of look past some pretty disturbing things and you're like, oh, but this is, you're still kind of caught up in the fantasy, even though like this captain's doing like awful stuff,
torturing people.
Yeah. Well, and I think the thing that does ground it all in a lot of his movies is just the visuals. Like, it's so appealing and interesting. And this movie won the Oscar for art direction and cinematography and makeup.
Mm-hmm.
So all these things that you're like, yeah, they were wonderful.
Yeah.
Anyway, was there other stuff with makeup and CG? I could talk about it more. I shouldn't, because we've gone too long, but
yeah. No, it's great though, because it's fascinating, because it did win. It won for a reason, and let's be real, Pat, you're kind of an expert in this field, so it's kind of nice to hear like what you thought about it, because it was so visceral for me, who's not a horror film guy. I was like, this is a fantasy that's bloody as all get out, and I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'll do one little, maybe leaning into fun facts.
Oh, yeah.
The captain's room, just speaking of art direction, because they're in a mill, they had this opportunity to have like cogs and things, and they really wanted it to feel like the inside of a watch. Because he's constantly trying to fix his father's watch, and it's this troubled mind and a searching for a legacy thing. Super cool. I didn't totally clock that, the first time.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh yeah, it's just so well done. Sewing his face. That was a crazy effect, by the way.
Oh yeah.
So they had a prosthesis, but it's basically just right over his real mouth, and then they blue screened
the open,
so they could kind of make a hole there. But he's really sewing through the prosthesis right next to his real flesh.
Nice.
And it's like, I was rewatching that knowing how they did it. I was like, careful.
It's so, just to open, anytime you see it where he's like opening it up a little bit, or like when he takes the shots and it's like leaking through.
Yeah, that's great.
The bandage. Oh, you can just only like imagine how painful that would have been. Not to mention he has multiple stab wounds that he doesn't seem to be bothering with. It's like,
just
gonna sew my mouth back together real quick. Oh, so intense.
Yeah.
I got a few more fun facts if we're ready for that.
Yeah. We're ready for fun facts.
Yeah, I've got mine out too.
Fun facts, and then we can land this plane.
Yeah. Okay, so the fairies start out as stick bugs, and they actually had real stick bugs for reference. And the two that they adopted were named Cheech and Chong. So that's fine.
That's so good.
And apparently they died during filming, but they had like 1,000 babies or something. So they were like, we have plenty of stick bugs. The captain, what's his name? Lopez? Sergei Lopez was apparently mostly known for like comedies up to this point.
No.
And he was a Mexican actor, right? Not Spanish.
I think he was Spanish.
He's Spanish, yeah.
Yeah, there was producers in Spain were like, you should be very careful because you don't know about these things because you're Mexican. But this guy is not going to be able to deliver the performance.
That's right.
And Del Toro said, well, it's not that I don't know. It's that I don't care.
Yeah, he's going to do it.
And he was super menacing.
Oh, he was terrifying.
Like, he was the creepiest, awfulest bad. I mean,
I can't imagine him in any comedy. And it's pretty amazing that he was known for that, I guess, before this.
Yeah. I don't know. Have you guys seen All the Light We Cannot See?
No.
Yes.
So the guy that keeps looking for her, the German officer, and just that actor in general is just a really good bad guy. But he just keeps coming.
Oh no, maybe I haven't seen that yet.
Just keeps coming after this blind girl who's helping send out messages to. Anyway, it reminded me of that, and like this guy's evil has no limits. You're just so there's nothing good. There's nothing redeeming. Nothing. It's just all bad.
Just seeking out.
There's not that many that are all bad guys. No. You know, there's like sometimes like, oh, he appreciates music or something. Like, no, he's just, ugh, gross.
Well, I think he was clearly good at being terrible, right? I think there's something about like, you can see why he was given this job because he's really good at being terrible. And then I think going back to like what you're talking about earlier, Seth, the fact that Ophelia's mom, who seemed like a good person, thought he was like an improvement in her life is like kind of telling of just how bad
life was.
We need
things must have got for them. Yeah, like I couldn't be alone anymore. Anyway, wild.
Yeah.
The other thing which Seth you kind of touched on, which I didn't know because I haven't seen Devil's Backbone. Sorry, everyone.
Same.
Is that some of the
That's crazy
rebels were actually the actors from Devil's Backbone, and so they have it as like
they're
literally those characters.
Oh, that's so
orphans.
Cool.
Are
they're the orphans.
So it's the same universe.
Cool.
So for you, that probably means a lot more than just
that is so cool. Yeah, that makes. Oh yeah, I can totally see. Like I'm in my head. I'm like, oh yeah, this taller version of. I wonder if the main guy was the brother or the. Oh man, I gotta look that.
I think it might have been guys who were all murdered in that first run, but last one I guess I'll do that I thought was pretty interesting is apparently the subtitles for like the Devil's Backbone were so bad that he decided he would do subtitles for this movie, and he worked with a couple people because he was like, I want it to be actually
you're going to translate
interpreted in the right way.
That's funny.
Yep.
Yeah. So
that's great.
There you go. Those are I think those are the fun facts I wanted to get to.
Those are some good ones.
Yeah. Mine are that, well, the biggest shocker is that Guillermo del Toro turned down directing Chronicles of Narnia, Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe to do this.
What?
Yeah.
Dark Narnia, as one of you said.
Yeah. Which is what made it so interesting to me. Is like Narnia could have been darker and was kind of written darker in some ways.
What?
But yeah, he said not only did he not regret that decision, but he's a big fan of the movie. So it all worked out. It was the right choice for sure. One of the makeup facts, Doug Jones, the fawn horns that they put on him, they had to put on last because they weighed 10 pounds. So that was the last piece of that makeup every time they did it. He did the subtitles himself.
Wow.
He gave up his entire salary, including back end points, to see the film come to realization, and still says that it was worth it.
He never got paid for this at all.
No.
That's the most.
Not really, seemingly. Like
that's the most artistic.
Yeah, I read that too, and I was like, "What?"
Yeah, he liked it. Not only did he turn down like all these other people saying we'll pay for it and double the budget, and
he had to like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
He wanted this on his shelf. You know, he didn't care.
That is so legit.
What a cool guy, right? What a cool guy.
I was going to say megalomaniac, but that's fine too. Cool guy works too.
Yeah.
He just needs to own things. That's not a very cool guy to me. He's just, he's a possessive Pat. You have the wrong thing here, buddy. No, but it's very cool. It's the most artistic thing ever. Like it's like the most like snobby movie director thing ever. Like that's like Kubrick's like, nice job, buddy.
Yeah. And then the last one I had was that this was the middle film of a trilogy that is never going to be finished. They did write the book, though.
What's the third part?
There's a third part. Another movie. Well,
I had read a
they're
thing.
Not making.
Well, so Devil's Back, kind
Part
of
one,
an
right?
unofficial trilogy.
Yes.
Yeah. So Devil's
That's
Back
the
one, part one,
unofficial
this is part
first
two.
part. This is
Right.
part 2. And then like 366 or 3, it's a number.
Yes, 669 or something. I don't know.
Interesting.
But it was co-written by Del Toro and someone else.
I got another hot take.
There's a book.
You have to come from a devout Catholic household to make really good horror. I've decided. Unless you...
Yeah, where did his imagination and dreams
this is-
come
Shame.
from?
This is
Some
the
of
most
shame mixed up in there.
Catholic movie I've ever seen. Like, a Protestant couldn't make this. That's like, you couldn't... A Protestant
I
from
must
America...
have a Catholic imagination.
You do.
Because I
It's the
really
guilt.
appreciate...
It's the guilt. It's the guilt.
Yeah.
Because I really think being an old world... Well, he's Mexican, though, right? He's not Spanish.
He's
Yeah,
Mexican.
Mexican.
So that's the most interesting thing. He's Mexican, but he loves the Spanish Civil War. And that's the crazy thing about it. Like, I would be interested because the Catholicism makes so much sense why he can blend this beautiful and awful worlds together. Because that's like the Catholicism is like all of the history and like as Americans, we're from Protestant Christian Puritanism. Like, it's not the same. It doesn't have this like mysticism that Catholicism has centuries of. And if you're from a Catholic family, you're like, oh yeah, no, this makes way more sense. Like you're just so much more in that world. And so when I was reading about him, like, from a devout Catholic, I'm like, oh, of course he was. Of course, you can't make horror without the acknowledgement of something higher above you, in a sense of, especially Catholicism, where it's more where you have Protestantism so loosey goosey. Let's just be real, guys.
I did. It's interesting that you said that, because I think I forget if it was Inarritu or Alfonso Cuarón, but one of the other Mexican directors that he's friends with was like, I think Guillermo thought this was maybe anti-Catholic, and he was like, I think this is the most Catholic movie
for sure
you've ever made.
I think it's like, to have evil, you're acknowledging like anti-evil, essentially, because you can't be... Atheists can't write good horror because they can't go with demons and angels. Let's just be real. Like, you gotta have a god and a devil.
I think that
make Hellboy.
Yeah, I think that the setting for the movie alone, just the end of the Spanish Civil War, the fact that the war was partly over religion or religious beliefs, and also the class warfare, but there's certainly got to be like a big religious piece to it, because that is kind of like the vibe of that war too, and everybody's coming out of it at the time. So
probably, but
there would have been some sort of influence in that way too, historically.
But since I watched Devil's Backbone, I definitely know it's not anti-Catholic, because the good guys are because it isn't pro-Catholic, but it's not necessarily anti-Catholic, and you definitely feel his message. Like, this movie is so good
it's
because
some Catholics, because he put a very specific line, like the priest, when they're like, oh, they only get one voucher, and he was like, well, God's already got their spirits, so who cares what happens to their bodies? Which was like a real line. Some Catholic priest around, I forget where it was, but some Catholic priest in Spain said this exact line, basically.
Cool.
Like, who cares what happens to your body?
Yeah.
As long as God's got, your spirit. And then the Pale Man, I think, is meant to be a little bit of a stand-in for corrupt males and children and consuming them. And
whoa.
Well, yeah, the pile of shoes. We didn't talk about the pile of shoes.
Yes.
And the pictures of the Pale Man eating children.
Yeah, that was gross.
No, he's one of the best. He's for as little screen time as the Pale Man got, he's one of the best bad guys in the last 20 years. If not the last 40.
It's
super creepy.
So... And just
It's just
how he fans his fingers,
how long the fingers are with the nails,
yeah,
the blood.
the
it's
coloring.
so good.
Oh yeah.
One more thing I want to just praise the movie for before we spoil that. I guess we all liked it. Maybe Seth, I don't know what you're thinking. The score and specifically the lullaby is so hauntingly beautiful to me.
Yeah.
That I was like, oh, I thought there was more of the lullaby in the movie, and it's kind of just at the beginning and the end.
Yeah.
But man, I love it so much, and the fact that it's diegetic.
Yeah.
And apparently that's a real lullaby. I couldn't find like what the lullaby was, but it's haunting, like real creepy to lull me to sleep with. But I loved it.
Yeah, I think the last thing I want to mention was what an amazing character Mercedes is in this film. And she's honestly the only actor in the whole thing that I recognized from anything else, because I had seen her in Y Tu Mamá También, which is very different, very different vibe of a movie, but also very good. But yeah, that's who I recognized from. And I was like, I don't think I recognized anybody else or had seen anybody else. Although the captain looked like you must know him or something, just because he was so, I don't know, in your face. But yeah, she was great. Like her character was great. Like the guilt of working for him and helping, and like how much she was like risking every single minute of every single day, and still, cared for Ophelia. And yeah, she was a cool character.
Weirdly, she plays Nora Allen, who is Barry Allen, the Flash's mom.
Yep.
In the Flash. It's like,
I did see that in her credits. I was like, I don't even. Yeah, that's not even.
I mean, she's in it quite a bit. She did not. I'm trying to remember, was she Spanish in that movie? But
yeah,
it's like all this Spanish stuff and then the Flash, and you're like,
exactly right. I was like, I don't think they look alike. I was like, if your mom's that good looking, you still look kind of weird, buddy. Very. How did my Spanish mom have a Jewish son? I don't know how that all works out, but it's so funny. The Flash is not very good. In the meantime, guys, is this movie snobby?
Sure is.
Not even a question. Jeez Louise.
How many was it? Like 130 top 10 lists as of not very long ago. Like it's it's up there.
It was top 10 of the year on like everyone's list. It was the top 10 of the year for everyone's list.
Yeah, it won Oscars, nominated for a bunch of stuff. It's in another language, so as Americans, it instantly adds snobbiness factor. And it's such a hard to kind of describe movie, and all the disparate elements feel like they shouldn't work together, and they do, and that makes it snobby, and it's like sad.
I like that.
Generally, right? So you go, so that's
it's
sad,
beautiful,
sad things
dark.
Are snobby.
Yeah. Oh, I love it.
But it's also really hopeful.
Hit all my heart buttons. I loved it so much.
I have decided
I
find
it a little bit hopeful.
Yeah.
A little
crazy.
Bit, yes. But in a non-American way, which is very nice.
Yes.
Because I was thinking, I'm like, of course this is a non-American movie, because you couldn't do these kind of movies in American movies. Like it felt like, oh yeah, this could be East Asian movie. This could be Hong Kong or
that was
China.
Another fun fact is the pale man, the eyes and the hands is a Japanese thing.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Which I think the name of it translated like eyes in hand.
Yeah.
Or something.
Or hands with the eyes in it or something.
Yeah. You're like, no, that's not a real clever name.
Yeah.
But okay.
I think the only lingering question for me is that how is she going to get up to the throne that is so tall?
I know. I didn't think that.
Is anybody else like, could she fly down there? I don't know.
Did she get a jump?
That's great.
They're so high.
Did you guys think her shoe shot was a Alice in Wonderland? Sorry, not Alice in Wonderland. Wizard of Oz.
Wizard of Oz.
Reference and or the red shoes
the
reference, which which was referenced. It's in theory an inspiration for this movie.
Really? Huh.
I guess so. In that it's like depressing and weird.
Yeah, and the girl dies at the end. Spoiler alert. The other movies that was compared to is very interesting, and then we'll, of course, Chronicles of Narnia because it's like for kids, but like this.
And there's a faunish thing.
Yes, Mr. Thomas. The Labyrinth is also compared to. Yeah. Mirror Mask, which I've never heard of.
No.
Oh, I did see that. I think it is based off what's his name that we're not supposed to like anymore. I'll think of it. He's the comic artist. Anyway, research team's on it.
It's not an artist.
Oh, okay. Spirited Away.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, a very good reference. I feel like that's legit.
Makes it even snobbier, right?
Yes, because
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, except it's not as much murdering and torturing in Spirited Away. And Bridge to Terabithia are the movies that it's
okay, which is a sad one.
Yes, it is.
Neil Gaiman
I don't know who that
is the author, and he wrote Sandman and Stardust and a bunch of good comic-y things, and then apparently Coraline is based off his work.
Oh, okay.
And apparently he made poor choices in life that's come out recently. Not the nicest guy, sadly. But I did watch Mirror Mask. It is interesting, but is not anywhere close to as visually stunning as this movie.
Really? Yeah. Well.
But similar to like a young girl on a weird quest.
Okay.
Huh.
Okay. Trial by Stone. Skeksis. This movie is okay. Okay, it's pretty dang good. I hate to, it's so good because it's so not American. It so doesn't fit anywhere. The details matter to the director. He wrote it. He directed it. He didn't produce it. I mean, he probably produced part of it, didn't he?
Subtitled
it. Like
no, I think he produced part of it.
He just it's such a act of love by Guillermo del Toro, one of the best directors of our era.
Yeah,
it's hard not.
It's
to
a creation.
It. Yeah,
it's
hard
for sure a creation.
Not to appreciate it. Mariah, does this movie stay on your top 10 list?
Absolutely.
Patrick, does this one make it to your top 10 list?
Ooh,
I'm gonna say no, but it's real good.
Yeah, it's real good.
In a lot of ways, I think the things that Guillermo and my taste align in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
the combination of war and fantasy visual effects and horror. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, it checks all the boxes I have.
Let's hang out. Yeah. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
I'll be honest. If I had to say which top 10 list it was on, Mariah or Pat's, I wouldn't know who to choose. Like, if I didn't know, you know what I mean? Like, it could have been on either one of your top 10 lists. I would have been fine with that.
Sure.
I mean, it's not going to be on my top 10 list because it doesn't reflect movies that I live in. That's not my home. It's foreign enough for me, which I like.
Yeah.
It's
that you don't live in the darkness.
I am not Catholic. I don't like horror. And I want my kids' movies to be more like Chronicles or Narnia. Okay, I'm just gonna say it. I'm a chicken. I'm a little bit of a pansy. I'm okay with that.
It's okay. Fine. One of us has to be.
Yeah, I'm like, you don't need all the torture scenes. You could just do it. You could still make them creepy.
Oh,
yeah, and the irony is
that's hard.
The scariest.
The hand.
The scariest. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, I forgot about that scene. Oh gosh. Oh,
so many unnecessary how horrible.
Scenes. So many.
That felt like a Quentin Tarantino scene.
Yeah, it did. It was like a Tarantino kind of like.
You can count to 3 without stuttering.
Children in this movie.
Yeah. Oh.
It's So, yeah, it felt Tarantino-esque.
Just count to 3.
What the crap? So no.
You know he's not going to get through Trace without stuttering. Come on.
So messed up. It does feel Tarantino-esque, but it's not. But it's got children, so it's just too. And maybe that's why he does it, because he's like, hey, reality's more messed up. It's all the best
parts of movie making.
Blah.
Storytelling, fun.
I will be in my. I want my bloody stuff to be Tarantino. I don't want it to be freaking kids movies.
You don't want cringy kids movies, huh?
Well, cringy's. I mean, I liked. Little Giants and other cringy movies like that, but Angels in the Outfield, I like that movie too. But Air Bud was great. But yeah, so that was.
You can do it, Tony Danza. You can throw a pitch.
Yes, but this was definitely very weird road to go down, and I now feel like I understand Del Toro a lot more. Yeah, you should watch Devil's Backbone. I'm not gonna lie.
I want to.
It's horrible.
And I want to read the book.
It's horrible.
3993 is the name of the third.
So yeah, it would be very interesting if we get that one made. I'd probably watch. I love Pinocchio. I love Del Toro's version of Pinocchio.
Cabinet of Curiosities is a kind of fun because it's just little episodes.
Yeah, I just don't know what he's gonna do next. Anyways, okay, so yeah, I appreciate that he is him and so recognizable. Except for Pacific. Okay. Other than that, guys, I think that's all we have to say for this time, guys. Keep watching movies. Like, subscribe. Tell us what movies we need to watch to be more snobby. We'd love to hear those comments. Otherwise, my name is Seth.
Mariah.
And
Pat.
And we are the How to Be a Movie Snob team, coming at you soon with another new fresh movie coming up. See you guys next week. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.